Welcome to the first virtual NSLI-Y virtual event of the 2017-2018 academic year. My name is Signe and I work for the NSLI-Y interactive team at Iron USA. And we're so excited to have you join us today. The event this morning will feature 4 NSLI-Y alumni who will share how NSLI has impacted their lives, what they're up to now, and any words of wisdom for those of you prospective students in the audience. I'd like to take a brief moment to direct your attention to the chat box on this platform. We encourage a robust dialogue throughout this event, so feel free to use the chat box to type any questions you have for the panelists throughout the event. If they aren't able to answer your question in the moment, we will revisit your question during the question and answer session at the end of this event. Please make sure to adjust your chat settings so it says either all panelists and attendees or everyone. We want to make sure that everyone is seeing the questions that you ask. And for those not able to join this event, we are recording this event and we'll post the recording on the NSLI-Y interactive website shortly following this event. And we are currently live on Facebook. So hello to everyone joining us from the NSLI-Y Facebook page. The event today will feature, as I said, 4 NSLI-Y alumni: Katie, Andy, Emma, and Alicia. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to your presenters, beginning with Alicia.
Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Chen. I'm a Mandarin Summer alumna, a current academic year student, and I'm the alumni rep for the Detroit Great Lakes region. My summer program was in Zhuhai, Guangdong, and my year program is in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. The top picture on this slide is all of my Zhuhai students together. That was like our first group picture, and then the bottom one is actually what I'm about to tell you guys about. It's us on top of Shoshan. So a story that really embodies NSLI to me is our Kaohsiung group. Our first excursion, we went to Shoshan, or Monkey Mountain in southern Kaohsiung. This mountain is really unique because there's a ridiculous number of monkeys who are really human friendly, and also because of the community that hauls up jugs of water every morning to rest points, and then they brew tea for hikers passing by. So during the hike, my group actually befriended one of the women in the community, and we learned a lot about each other. That was just really interesting because we got to hear about what her life was like as someone who hikes the mountain every day, and she got to learn about what our life was like as, you know, American exchange students. So we exchanged lines, which is the most common form of communication in Taiwan, and we're actually planning on hiking again soon. So this was just special to me because I love learning Chinese and hiking. So having these two parts of me intersect in such a specific way is just really neat. Next slide. Thanks. So on this slide, the top left picture is my Zhuhai group after our graduation. Host families, teachers, everyone. The bottom left is part of my Kaohsiung group on the rooftop of the Kaohsiung Main Library. The middle ones are from Kaohsiung and the right ones are from Zhuhai. So NSLI has impacted my life in so many ways, and it's just really crazy to think about what my life would lack if I hadn't found out about the program. So right now I'm on a gap year, but in the fall I'll be attending Reed College, and I'm planning on majoring in Chinese and political science with a focus in environmental science. I want to work in international environmental policy, specifically with China and resource management. I grew up in Michigan, so being surrounded by the Great Lakes has taught me to really love the resources we're given and their absolute importance. And so sustainable growth is what really interests me. Next slide. Okay, some words of wisdom. To all applicants, please start your essays early. If you haven't started them yet, please start them like as soon as this is over, because you'll really thank yourself later, because you really do need time to write a good essay, one that's really impactful and that really puts out what you want it to. Your essays are probably the most important part of your application, so just really don't procrastinate this. And going off of that, be as specific as possible in your essays and just avoid blanket statements. If you want to be a lawyer, tell us what kind of lawyer you want to be, what inspires you to be that kind of lawyer, and how you can use your NSLI language in that field. Just being really specific in your essays is what will make them stand out and be really impactful. And my last piece of advice is to talk to alumni. As an alumni who talks to a lot of alumni, I promise that we're all really nice and we all really want to help. The Facebook group is Ask NSLI Alumni. So literally just post a question there and a ton of people will respond, anyone who can relate to the situation you're worried about. If you want someone to look over your essays, they definitely will. So yeah, just don't be afraid to talk to past students because we're all really willing to help. And now Andy will speak about his NSLI experience.
Thank you, Alicia. So hello, my name is Andy Nguyen. I am a current sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm the alumni rep of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for the last 2 years now. I went on the NSLI-Y China program in summer 2015 in Hangzhou. And I think that my favorite experience from NSLI-Y was definitely the people I've met. So you can see from these two pictures, the second picture is my entire NSLI group, all 20 of us, along with our tour guide. And then the picture on the left is actually how we prepared for our final exam by doing what they call a 听写 in Chinese on the board. We definitely filled up the board and impressed our teachers. So I think my favorite story definitely is my host family. I was very fortunate to be put into a very, very nice host family. My host brother and I still talk to this day, and he recently finished the Gaokao in China, which is the college entrance exam. So he's starting college, and I'm starting my second year in college in America. And to this day, we still relate. We still have really long discussions in chat, just like we did 2 years ago in China. So I think that my favorite experience would be definitely the people I've met, whether it be my fellow participants, some of whom I'm actually doing an event in Philadelphia with in 2 weeks, where we speak to prospective NSLI-Y applicants in our area, just like you, and many of whom I still talk to, whether it be seeing them in person when they come visit in Philly or if I'm in their city. My host family, of course, my language teachers, etc. It's definitely the connections and friendships and relationships of NSLI-Y that I still hold valuable to this day. As to my words of wisdom on the next slide, I believe that my first would be ask for help. So whether that be before your program, during your program, or after your program, your language teachers, your organization, your host family, your RD, all of them are excellent resources for you to ask for help. And if they don't know, they'll always be able to direct you to someone who will know. Secondly, step outside of your comfort zone. So one of the craziest things I've done when I was in China was try stinky tofu, which is a fermented tofu dish. It's a specialty actually of Taiwan. It's definitely not something I thought I would ever end up trying, but I tried it and I don't regret it. Honestly, I kind of crave it right now. And it's definitely something that you should do while you're on NSLI, step outside of your comfort zone, whether that be trying a new dish, seeing a new show, exploring the city, trying to go to a new restaurant, or just eating at a hole in wall that you always wanted to try, but you never really thought you wanted to. The third thing would be set attainable goals. So for me, I always set a goal of language learning. Every week, I would assess myself to see how I would do against my goals and then improve on that, whether it be trying to interact with more locals or trying to learn as many words in a certain context. So for example, one thing I love telling people is on NSLI-Y, your language learning is not limited to just the four walls of your classroom, as your city and your country is your classroom. Whether it be taking a taxi to the movie theater, trying to get a noodle dish for lunch, all these little things are great opportunities for you to practice your language and further expand your learning than just what you learned from the textbooks. Lastly, have fun. So 2 years later, this is my outgoing year as the alumni rep for Philadelphia. I still can't put into words how much NSLI-Y has done for me in terms of becoming a life-changing experience, whether it's the people I've met here in Philadelphia as part of being alumni rep, or the people I've met in Hangzhou, or the amazing American Council staff I've met these last 2 years in DC while being alumni rep. Everyone has been an incredible resource to me. So I definitely say take advantage of every opportunity you get, meet as many people as you can, learn as much as you can. And next, I would like to introduce Emma.
Hi everyone, like Andy said, my name's Emma and I'm currently the alumni representative for virtual engagement and I participated in Korea Summer 2016. So the experience that I want to talk about that truly embodies the program can't be shown through pictures because I did not document it. I was truly in the moment for the experience. However, I do have some pictures here. On the left is my supporter group at the most famous palace in Seoul, and on the right is me and my host mom during our first dinner out. We visited a Hello Kitty themed restaurant. But the experience I want to talk about is a very simple one. It was a Saturday night, a few weeks into the program, and I ate Korean-style pizza and fried chicken in the living room of my host family. And the entire host family was there, including my extended host family, both sets of grandparents, and lots of cousins. It was truly the most memorable to me and the most meaningful because it was truly a cross-cultural conversation. I learned about my host dad's love for Western films, as well as my host grandmother who loved Marilyn Monroe. I learned about a lot of southern cities in Korea that I hadn't known previously, and I learned a lot about my host grandparents and how they grew up in Korea. I was also able to correct some misinformation that both sets of host family grandparents had learned about America. It was truly nice to be able to talk to them and see how far my Korean skills could get me, and I was really proud to be able to spend that time with them and to see how much I could talk with them in the host language. Next slide, please. So Nestle has impacted me in a numerous amount of ways, but one thing is that it truly gave me confidence, especially confidence in language learning, and inspired me to tackle even more difficult languages. This past summer, I did Start Talk Chinese, which is another program to allow high school students to study critical languages. I studied traditional Chinese for 4 weeks at a local university, and the things that I learned in Korea, especially when it came to studying languages and having confidence and not being afraid to make mistakes, truly helped me to excel in this class. And I'm still a high school student. Currently, I'm a senior, so I don't know exactly what I would like to do in the future, but I do want to study political science or international relations. And no matter what, my college must have Korean and Chinese classes because I will want to continue studying those languages. Next slide, please. And for some words of wisdom, do not compare yourself to anyone else. I know that's hard when you want to read other people's essays and when you're in country, other people are speaking the language around you. You may feel intimidated by how much they know compared to you, but just know that you are a unique individual and you shouldn't compare yourself to anyone else because everyone is going to be able to write differently, have different experiences, and learn a language differently. And it's important just to stick to yourself and know that you're an individual and you shouldn't compare, that might bring you down or bring others down, and everyone's different, and that's important to keep in mind. Also, be genuine, especially when it comes to the applications. If you want to go to a country for some unconventional reasons, especially for the 3 reasons why essay, put those down and showcase it. Don't form yourself into a cookie cutter Nestle applicant that you think that Nestle wants, because honestly, they want unique individuals and everyone is unique. So put down what you truly want to go for, and that will help your essay stand out. And while in country, I hope you guys all spend as much time as you can with your host family. They're truly a meaningful part of the experience, and it's important to try your best to really connect relations with them. Like Andy said previously, I'm really happy to hear that he still talks through his host family. I know I do. I text my host mom every single week. She always sends me photos of her sons every Sunday, and I get to see what they had done over the past week, and it's really great to be able to keep in touch with them. Also, it's important to know when and when not to take photos. I love scrolling through the Nestle Instagram and seeing all the amazing photography skills of our Nestle participants, but it's also important to know when you need to be in the moment and put your camera away and just truly live in that experience, but also take plenty of photos because you're gonna want those in the future. And lastly, study as much as you need to. Everyone's going to have to study different amounts of time and have different studying techniques to keep on pace with their class and to truly get the most out of the Nestle experience. And so know how much you need to study. We all are through high school. We know what helps us to learn, and make sure not to stress yourself out too much by studying and truly experience things and not just stay locked up in your room all day with the doors closed. And now we're going to hear about the experience of Katie.
Hi everyone, thank you all for coming. My name is Katie and I'm a NSLI Arabic alumni from 2010. I spent a semester in Cairo, Egypt, back when there were semesters. So it's been 7 years since I was a NSLI student, and in some ways that feels like it's been a really long time. But this program has impacted me in countless ways, affected my worldview, my life choices since then. And it's still, to this day, a really big part of my life. Next slide, please. So I think one of the main ways that NSLI has affected my life is from being able to study abroad at such a young age. It made me learn at a young age the importance of international and educational experience, and made me prioritize those types of experiences going forward. So when I started college, I wanted to study abroad as much as possible, and I chose a school where I could study abroad 5 out of the 8 semesters in different parts of Asia and Central America. And it also really impacted what I do for work. I'm an immigration paralegal working with victims of domestic violence to assist them in getting different forms of immigration relief separate from their abusive partners. And I became interested in immigration law because I was volunteering with Arabic-speaking refugees in my community after participating in the NSLI program, and that's what led me to start developing this passion. And thirdly, I met a lot of really amazing people on the NSLI program that are still a part of my life today. From being an alumni rep and going to different events that we have planned as an alumni community. And this network has given me a lot of really cool opportunities. Like last week, I just went to a conference sponsored by the State Department on human trafficking that was for alumni of State Department exchange programs. So even 7 years later, I was able to have that door open for me, which was really cool. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of things I wish I could go back in time and tell my 16-year-old NSLI self, but these are the main 3 that I think will be relevant to someone who's a prospective student to the program. I think that no matter where you are, but especially on your exchange, try to find ways to give back to the community. There are so many people who are working around you as volunteers to give you this opportunity, whether it be your host teacher who goes out of her way to translate for you so you can follow along in class, or the local volunteers that are putting on your in-country orientation. A lot of people are donating their time to you, and I think it's really important to think of ways how you can be helpful in return to them, and not just take it for granted that they're doing so many things for you. And so for me, one of the main things I always tried to do was help people who are looking to learn English. So I feel like that's a skill that we all have as people who are really interested in learning languages. Because we think of things in a linguistic way, we're able to help people, who are looking to learn our own language. So be someone's language exchange partner, or help out in an English class, or analyze other skills that you have that you can use to be helpful to the community around you. If you're a dancer, see if there's any dance classes that you can help out at, or just get involved in anything in your school where you are on one hand being helpful and also like giving yourself an opportunity to connect with people and learn from people. And this is particularly important when you're thinking about your host family. It took me years to understand fully how much my host family gave to me. Like, they were living in a small 2-bedroom apartment, and now that I'm living in a small 2-bedroom apartment, I can't imagine having another person in there feeding them 3 meals a day and not getting paid for it, and that's a really big thing to recognize, that they're donating their time and they're, opening up their home to you. And so really remember that when, they ask you to follow a rule that you don't understand, or if there's any communication problems. there's not going to be a night out or time with your friends that is worth jeopardizing the relationship with someone who's letting you into their home. And I think another really important thing is to read as much as you can before you go, and to read high quality things. When I was preparing to be a NSLI student, I picked up like a Lonely Planet guide and like this book called Culture Shock Egypt. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm like so prepared. I'm like reading really cool stuff. But one thing I learned from studying abroad after in college is that, those kind of books, especially the Lonely Planet, like they have value to teach you, like, hey, where do you want to go? Where do you want to explore? But they can also be very surface level analysis of like, okay, this is what you should do, this is what you don't do, in terms of following cultural norms. They can be written by, expats who don't even speak the local language. So, and they can be really full of like generalizations and even stereotypes about the country that you're going to. So really try and seek out high quality information, books on the history of the place that you're going to, especially like the last 100, 200 years. Like when I was going to Egypt, I was focusing on like the ancient Egyptian history, and I didn't know anything about, the modern history of Egypt that has shaped the political system. And if you want to be able to have high quality conversations when you're there and high quality conversations when you come back and everyone's asking you, oh, how was Egypt? How was this? You really need to inform yourself and definitely prioritize books that were written by people from that country so that it's not just a Western analysis of the things that you're encountering. And also I recommend start following local politics, even if that comes from, Googling what are the major newspapers in China and following them on Facebook. So then, and the city that you're going to. So then that stuff starts popping up in your newsfeed, and oh, hey, they're having a local election. Oh, hey, these are the local political parties. These are the local issues that I need to start being aware of because people are going to ask, and then I can participate in those conversations. And yeah, try to analyze things in looking at things about your host country and your local country as well, so that you can compare and contrast how those issues affect you, how those issues can be comparable. For example, like when I came back from Egypt, everyone was asking me like, oh, what was it like to be a woman in Egypt? And, pretending that like gender inequality is something that only happens in other countries. And, as someone working in domestic violence, I came back and started analyzing how that issue affects my community as well in the United States. And that's really important to do, to not pretend that global issues are something that happen elsewhere, and also like look at things happening here. Another thing, just try to stay humble when you're here and when you're there. Try to recognize that you don't know everything about the local country. Try to ask questions, try to learn as much as possible, and from like a diversity of perspectives. From people of all different age groups, they're going to think about politics and culture differently. So trying to be able to ask questions and get involved in the alumni network so you can do cool things like this and speak in a webinar and meet people who are like-minded. So with that, I think we're going to open up to a question and answer session with all of the panelists.
Thank you so much, presenters, for the insight and advice you have shared this morning. We're so grateful, and I'm really excited to hear any questions that the audience has. Before I open up the floor, I wanted to take a quick moment now to share 2 resources to learn more about the NSLI-Y program. And And also an announcement, in case you're not already aware, the NSLI application for 2018-2019 programs is currently open, and the deadline is November 2nd at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So definitely take advantage of these alumni right now. If you're joining us, ask them questions. And to learn more, you can visit the NSLI-ForYouth.org main website for all information on the NSLI-Y program and how to start an application. And you can also check out the NSLI-Y interactive site for stories written by current students on program and alumni to hear the student perspective. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and invite all panelists to turn on their webcams, which they already have. And we'd love to hear your questions. Panelists, if you see a question in the chat box, please read it out loud first before answering so we can catch that question for the recording.
Okay, so there's a question that says, "Hi alumni, I am curious. What influenced you to choose the language you chose?" So I guess my answer would be I took Mandarin Chinese in 7th grade. I was one of the first dozen students at my school to take it. So naturally, I was really interested in going abroad to China. So that's why I chose to study Mandarin Chinese with NSLI-Y.
My answer is kind of complicated, so story time. My parents are Chinese immigrants. They immigrated from the mainland to Canada and then to Michigan. So I grew up hearing the language around me, and I thought it was really, really beautiful, but I never learned it. I'd never attended like Saturday school or anything. And then in 8th grade, my grandparents came to visit me, and I realized, wait, I should learn this language that, you know, is part of my heritage. So in high school, I started taking it, and I realized I really enjoyed learning it in addition to listening to it. And yeah, that's how I found myself in the NSLI programs.
I actually originally wanted to study Turkish because I'd gone to Turkey before the NSLI program. But then I ended up choosing Arabic because I was just, I don't know, looking at like the number of speakers in the world and thought that it would be really interesting to learn like a language that's spoken by so many different countries. I don't know if that was like a valid reasoning, but it's definitely been helpful.
I was inspired to take up learning Korean because of a new student that came into my grade in the middle of the year, and she was Korean. She wasn't from Korea, she was from Florida, but she spoke Korean, and I started hanging out with her more often, and with her family. She took me to Korean church, and I just ended up starting to learn the language, and it inspired me to apply for NSLI.
How do students spend holidays? Like, Emma, can you read that?
Chuseok. So
Okay.
during the summer, you don't celebrate that because it's a September holiday. It's in the fall. It's Korean Thanksgiving. But I've read plenty of blogs from NIA students, and I have some of the alumni from my summer program on year right now, and they were celebrating it because of just the first day already started. But you spend holidays with your host family, of course. They will take you to the extended family houses wherever the holiday is occurring, and they'll take you into their family and show you what the holiday is all about and celebrate it with them, eating delicious food.
Yeah, and there's an upcoming holiday here in Taiwan. It's National Day, and we will have 2 days, 2 days off from school and work. My host family will be taking me around southern Taiwan, so we're going to 4 different hiking spots and cities, and yeah, usually host families will take you somewhere really interesting and you'll get to see more of the actual country. Okay, and Scarlett from Facebook asks, is there a viewpoint or opinion that changed due to an experience you had while abroad with NSLI? That's a really good question. So for me, I'll just speak about Zhuhai just because like that already happened and I've had more time to think about it. and reflect. So while I was in Zhuhai, I had several interesting conversations. While I was there, the South China Sea conflict kind of like unfolded. And also I was asked by several people if it was safe to attend university in the US because of gun violence and what gun laws were like in the US. I don't know if my viewpoints really change. It's just being in another country and experiencing that cultural exchange is really, really like eye-opening, just because you see what the other side views it as. Like with the South China Sea conflict, I saw what it was like from mainland China and also what it was like as an American. And with gun violence, I had never really thought that perhaps international students would think of, like, be concerned with that in the US, because I never was and my friends never were when they applied to college. So it's just interesting to see how things are different in other countries and how they think of us as Americans. And then when there are issues, like one of the parents, she straight up said to me, like, it's not safe to go to college in the US. And in that situation, as a student ambassador, it's your duty to just explain it's safe. There are just things that can happen and it's unfortunate, but like, don't be afraid to come to the US because of it.
Jennifer from Facebook asks, who are the host families? Can you tell me a little bit about your host family experience? Were you with another student with your host family, and did you feel safe so far away from home? So I was hosted with a mom and 3 sisters who were 19, 16, and 9 or 10 at the time. I don't remember. And the dad was working in Libya. And then I hosted an exchange student when I came back. So the host families are volunteers who, they have a variety of different family structures, some with young kids, some with old kids, some with no kids, some with kids around the age of the students. And I had a great experience both being hosted and hosting. You know, really the goal is to become part of the family for a short period of time and get involved in everyone's, in the family's daily life. And I think it's a really important part of the program to really be able to have a home base, to be able to have that support emotionally and in your language and cultural learning as well. And if anyone else wants to add.
I'll add that both of my host families have been absolutely amazing. I still talk to my host family from Zhuhai. I actually visited them and stayed with them over my senior spring break. NSLI host families are great, and if there is an issue, NSLI works very hard along with the partnering organizations to make sure that that student feels comfortable in whatever host family they're in. During pre-departure orientation and in-country orientation, there are a lot of presentations on how to adjust to a host family, and yeah, you're very well prepared going in, and NSLI does a lot to make sure that students feel comfortable so far away from home.
So the next question is, from the NSLI-Y program, what experiences do you think helped you the most in your college experience or just life in general? So I think the number one lesson I learned from NSLI-Y is how to be an independent person, and this experience helped me to become a more mature person. So what I mean by that is, when you're on NSLI-Y, yes, you're in a foreign country, yes, you have your host family, your RD, but in a sense, you're much more independent than you are, let's say, living in America. You have to figure out how to first get to school, how to live your daily life in a completely foreign country. So for me, it really helped me prepare for college and perhaps for life beyond, as you have to make your own decisions. You have to assess what you need to do, when you need to do it, and how to get it done. So I think these are the life skills that NSLI taught me, which are very valuable today and probably will be more valuable going forward in life.
Yeah, I think like when I look back and I look at like what I'm doing now for work, you know, all the things that they say that you'll get on from a study abroad program, cross-cultural skills, language skills, are definitely super relevant to a bunch of different things that you can do for a career. Like, I work with people from all over the world who have had very different experiences than I have, and being able to empathize with them, being able to put yourself in their shoes, being able to speak their language, makes a huge difference in being able to interview someone about very sensitive things. So I think it's definitely, and you see alumni working in a bunch of different fields and still saying that they are using the skills that they gained from this experience.
Okay, and Lexi from Facebook asks, how proficient were you in your language after your experience? So for NSLI, before your program starts, you take a test. It's called the OPI. It's the oral proficiency interview. So it's an interview, and you speak in your target language, and basically you're assessed. It's beginner, intermediate, advanced, and I think there are 3 within each of those levels. So just like me personally, I went up 2 levels during my summer program, and then yeah, that was pretty standard for Chinese, I believe, but basically you'll pick up the language really quickly, especially if you're a beginner, because you have to be able to communicate with your host family and just get around on a daily basis. I'm sure the other panelists would like to talk about their OPIs and experiences.
So I came into the Korea program with no knowledge of the Korean language. I knew how to read and I knew common phrases, which is what put me into the intermediate class at my university, but I didn't really have any background in Korean because I did not take Korean in school. I was studying it independently, like I assume most of you probably are. So when I tested, I was at novice low, which is the lowest level you can be at, and I jumped all the way to intermediate mid. And that was through a lot of practicing with locals and not being afraid to make mistakes, because mistakes really help you learn. And when you take the OPI the first time, I recommend not to really study for it. Just go in how you naturally are, because you want to see your skills normally. You don't want to cram a lot before and have a score that your language skills and get into college and you don't know all those things. It might help to see a really improvement that really showcases your change in language.
Do you want to go to this next question? Amber asks, I have 2 language choices to decide between. One, I would like to apply for simply because I'm studying it independently and absolutely love it. The other I want to apply for because I plan on studying it in college. Can you give me advice on how to choose, please? For me, I think it depends. Okay, it just says I'm planning on studying Chinese in college and I'm studying Korean on my own. For me, I would look at that as how do you want to use the language, or why are you studying those languages? Both languages could be useful, and if you go apply for the NSLI program for Korean now, you can maybe try and study in China in the future, or vice versa. So I think, yeah, it's really hard to know like which one to apply for. I think sometimes it helps if you have a base in the language to be able to, if you've been studying Korean on your own, that might make the study abroad experience more valuable now. And then once you start studying Chinese, you can try and study in China. But that's just my take on things. It's maybe flip a coin. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I would just definitely go with whichever one you're most interested in. Since you're already studying Korean and you love it, like that's something to factor in. But if you think in the long run you'll be studying Chinese, that's like another important factor. Honestly, just go with whatever you're most passionate about, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to show through in your essays. Yeah.
Did we miss any questions? Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to ask?
Okay, so there's a new question. What were some reasons you all wanted to go to the countries you did? So I think I mentioned this before. I've taken Chinese for 4 years by that point. So I really wanted to go to China, just to have hands-on experience with the language and learn more than just what I learned in America, because the best way to learn a language is to go to an immersion environment. And in my case, it would be China. So I wanted to go to not only experience the culture, meet people, experience the food, but also to learn the language even further.
Brooklyn asks, how did you cope with homesickness? Okay, so first let's tell you about the W curve. So basically, there's a diagram, I guess what you can call it, in the shape of a W that shows cultural adjustment. So typically, you can look it up, it's just like the letter W curve. Typically at the bottom of the W is where you would experience homesickness. And for me in Zhuhai, that was pretty tough. Just because it just like all hit me at once. So how did I handle it? Just honestly, just keep yourself busy. Like that's the most important thing. You're in this new country, probably for the first time. There's so much to do. Your city's probably so amazing. Your host family probably has all these things planned. Just make sure you keep busy and create really strong bonds with the people you're with, and learn the language as much as you can while you're in country.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to reach out also to other people. If you're feeling really sad and homesick, try and reach out to the people on your program and in your in your local host community, because if you're reaching to people back home, that's just going to make you feel more homesick. And that's hard because they've been your parents, your friends back home, they've been your support network for your whole life, and then suddenly you're in this really new environment and they're half a world away, and you shouldn't really fully rely on them as your support network. And it's hard to build that support network again quickly enough for you to be able to rely on when you're feeling really sad. But all the students on your program are going to be experiencing similar things at different times, and your host family, trying to rely on them as well is really important in forming that relationship with them.
Yeah, sorry, you go, Emma.
Yeah, I agree with Katie. I know when I felt homesick, I would tell my host mom, and then we would immediately go outside and walk around the apartment complex for a few minutes to half an hour, depending on how much I needed, and I would just talk to her about it, and she would always cheer me up. She would take away my mind from my homesickness and ask me different questions about school and how my Korean was going, and it was just really nice to see her really caring about me and wanting me to not feel so homesick. And so just talking with her and going on our little walks was really helpful for me when I was missing home.
Yeah. And trying
sorry. Okay, so I just wanted to add to what Katie said earlier. Realistically, at least for my Zhuhai group, we all experienced homesickness at the same time, fairly intensely. So if we had just talked about it with each other, it would have been so much easier. And also, if you do call your parents and tell them that you're really sad, that'll worry them, even though you're probably only going to be homesick for a couple hours at most, like half a day, before you find something amazing in your city or you have a really good conversation with your host family. Yeah, so just make sure that you talk to the people around you in the group that you're with if you are homesick.
Yeah, and also trying to turn off Facebook and Instagram when you're feeling homesick, I think that's part of what fuels homesickness. If you're looking and being oh, all my friends are at prom right now, or oh, all my friends are my family's having this amazing summer trip, or Christmas, holidays, especially if you're on the year program, it can be really tough to feel like you're on one hand, you're having this amazing once-in-a-lifetime experience, and on the other hand, there are things happening back home that you're not able to be a part of at the same time. But like 7 years later, for example, like missing a Christmas isn't going to matter when you had like this really amazing experience that you really won't get back. So not that helps in the moment, but if you can like try and think further down the line.
So Julia from Facebook asks, for those of you who went to China, what was the most stark cultural difference that you experienced? Was there anything that struck you as being very similar to American culture? So I think that you'll see in tier 1 cities, as they call it, tier 1 meaning they're more westernized, they're more international, and there's a higher number of expats. So in Shanghai, for example, it's very Western. Shanghai is probably the most Western city in mainland China, in my opinion, having been to Beijing and Shanghai. So you'll see a lot of Western establishments. You have your Pizza Huts, etc. And a lot of times, certain areas of Shanghai will make you feel like you're in New York City, just because of the history of Shanghai having French, American, British concessions and everything. In terms of the most stark cultural difference, definitely how cheap everything is. So in China, you could pretty much live on less than $5 a day in terms of food and transportation, just by how inexpensive everything is. That was probably the most stark cultural difference I've had.
Unmuted. Okay. Yeah, I agree with Andy. Definitely the most stark cultural difference is just how cheap everything is. It's really crazy. And like you start getting used to like converting things in your head when you see the price tag, and everything just feels so cheap. But don't go too crazy because your stipend is limited. And another like stark cultural difference to me was and is like how straightforward people are. It's like when people ask you questions and stuff, it's really interesting how they aren't like, oh, but like kind of, or like they just ask, which is, I like it a lot more because that way it's like way more efficient. And when you're trying to make friends, it's just way easier. And about being similar to American culture, in Zhuhai, there weren't a lot of foreigners, but there were still quite a few Pizza Huts, which is really funny. But even then, like Pizza Hut and like McDonald's are very different from American Pizza Hut and McDonald's and like American like cultural things anyways. Pizza Hut is like a sit-down restaurant and McDonald's has green tea soft serve. So yeah, just a little different.
Yeah, going off of that, to address the food in your host country question, so food is amazing. You have all different options. So Chinese food, Thai food, different food from different parts of Asia. And even within China, there's 8 different cuisines. So you have an amazing diverse food selection. And there's a lot of Western food as well. And some students in my group were vegetarians and vegans, and they still found that the food was accommodating to them.
Yeah, there's definitely something you'll find that you like. And even if there isn't, in Taiwan, there are 7-Elevens everywhere. Just go to 7-Eleven, pick something up. Yeah, and if you have a food allergy, just be careful. People are really honestly accommodating. My host family is like so alert about it. In Zhuhai, they would ask the waiters and waitresses like at least twice every meal. And here they don't even cook with peanut oil. I have a peanut allergy, even though I've told them that that's fine. So yeah, food is great.
Christina says, I really would like to apply for the year program because I believe it will give me more of a beneficial experience and help me more in the future. I've heard, however, that it's harder to get into and I should apply for the summer program, even though I would prefer the year. Can you tell me the differences between the year program and the summer program? I would say definitely apply for the year program. Don't listen to whoever's telling you that it's just because it's easier that you should try for that. Shoot for the moon. Like, don't listen to people who tell you you can't do things. The year program is awesome. I actually went on a semester program. But the longer programs are awesome because you get to be in the place for like a whole year of your life and really get to build a community there and like go to a local high school for a whole year and really be immersed in language for a year. I would definitely recommend the year program. Definitely.
Yeah, don't listen to people who tell you not to apply to like a certain program because, oh, there are less spots or whatever. That's really silly. And yeah, just go with whatever your heart desires and what you're honestly passionate about, because that's what's going to show through in your essays. And also because like that's what'll make you happy and what you want. So why listen to other people when they're wrong?
Yeah, just in general, don't listen to people who tell you that you can't do things. Or you could do what Alicia's doing. You could do a summer and a year.
Yeah, it's a good deal.
Did we miss anyone?
Yes, we're missing. Okay, I'll read them. Viviana asks, how did you find out about NSLI? How did you know you wanted to participate in the program? Was it something you had been passionate about for a long time? Okay. I found out about NSLI in a really weird way. I basically saw on the Explore page of Instagram that someone had posted their acceptance letter. That's like a really uncommon way to find out about NSLI, but I mean, worked out great. Second part of the question, how did you know you wanted to participate in the program? I saw that the word scholarship, and then I saw the words Mandarin Chinese, and I was like, oh, this is cool. So I went on the website and I subscribed myself so that I would know when the application came out. And was it something you had been passionate about for a long time? Yeah, like I said earlier, basically from like I was a kid and I understood what was being spoken around me to in high school when I started studying the language.
For me, I found out about NSLI in 7th grade. I was watching YouTube videos on Korea and study abroad, and I came across a past alumna named Elaine, and I watched her YouTube videos on her summer in Korea, and I was in 7th grade at the time, so when I watched her videos, I talked to her in the comments of YouTube, and I decided right then and there that I was going to do NSLI, and obviously I had to wait a couple years until I could apply, but as soon as I got into high school, that's the first thing I did. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I heard about it from the internet. I was looking to apply for a AFS program in Central America, actually, to practice Spanish. And then on their website, they listed the NSLI program. And I was like, yeah, I want to study all these other languages too. Why not? And so I applied, and I was also really interested in Islam and Eastern politics. So that was also things that were drawing me in.
So for me, I found out about it my sophomore year of high school from my Mandarin teacher. I was actually rejected my first time around, and I was really discouraged, but I decided to give it a second time around my junior year. So especially for those applicants who may be rejected this cycle, just know that you have so many more chances, especially if you're a freshman or a sophomore, to reapply. Honestly, I didn't think I would get it my second time around, but lo and behold, I did, and now I'm here. So definitely don't be discouraged if you do get rejected your first time.
And Lexi from Facebook asks, I know Alicia briefly mentioned a stipend, but how much pocket money should one set aside, or is pocket money even necessary? Okay, I can tell you with 100% confidence that you can totally live off the stipend. You just have to be really good at, well, not even really good at, you just have to money manage, and you can even like splurge realistically if you're really into night market food or you really want to buy a pair of shoes or something, but you just have to manage your money properly. As for pocket money, it really depends on what kind of person you are. I've heard of people who have like almost made money on their NSLI program just because they they manage their money so well that like they manage to save a little bit at the end. But if you know you like shopping or you know you're really into night market food, then yeah, just figure out how much you think you'll spend and bring a debit card, basically.
I have a question for the panelists. We have a few minutes left, so if anyone has any final questions, please share now, either in the chat box or on Facebook Live. Earlier, Alicia, you mentioned being a student ambassador while abroad, and I think this is something that we care really deeply about in the NSLI community, is NSLI scholars serving as citizen ambassadors. Could you all share, what does it mean to be a citizen ambassador?
So I think there's a very common misconception, especially during my time in China. My language teachers originally thought that American students were not as hardworking and not as academically focused as Chinese students. But when my group came into Hangzhou, we really wanted to dispel this myth. So when they saw us doing the Qingxies, like I showed in my presentation on the board, on the PowerPoint earlier, and how focused we were before every single exam, and how we would go see our teachers every single day for extra help if we needed it, I think this really dispelled their myth and their stereotype of American students, because a lot of times international audiences get a very distorted sense of America, American students, American school culture from the media and from movies and TV shows. So I think being a citizen ambassador means that not only are you sharing American culture, but you're also educating people about what America truly is. It's not what you see in the media, it's not what you see in the TV shows, the movies that portray this warped and distorted image, but it's really the true essence of America.
Yeah, exactly what Andy just said. It's really interesting hearing all these stereotypes. My host mom, actually, just last night we were walking and she asked me like what my high school was like, and this is her actually 4th time hosting, and she told me like before she had hosted an American student, she thought that all American high schools were like in the movies, and I thought that was the funniest thing, because even when I see like high school like coming of age stories or whatever, I'm like, how do they have time for that? So yeah, just being a good representation of what America really is like. Diverse groups learning about other cultures and other languages is exactly what NSLI does.
And I think that's also really important. You're also an ambassador when you come back. You know, like everyone for years to come is going to ask you, how was your experience? And this isn't necessarily fair or right, but like you're somehow expected to be an expert in a country that, you know, maybe you've only spent 6 weeks in, and people are going to ask you about the politics and the culture and everything. And so it's really important not to spread misinformation. It's really important to, you know, if someone asks you a question that you don't really know, to say that rather than to like, you know, answer a question incorrectly or answer it in a way that doesn't like capture the whole complexity of a country. You know, if people are going to ask you about, you know, what, you know, for me, like, oh, what do Egyptians think about Americans? I got asked that question all the time. And it's like, the person asking that question assumes that like a country has the whole, you know, has one singular opinion. And, you know, being like, hey, I had a really good experience. Everyone was super nice to me. If they have any stereotypes, it's probably based on like really legitimate political reasons. But most people also can distinguish politics from people, or so just like trying to bring information back, or admitting that you don't know things is also really important.
Yeah, I agree with Katie. I know when I came back, because of my community, it's not too diverse. There are a lot of the same types of people. I got a lot of questions of people that just simply were not informed about South Korea. They kept asking me questions that were more like North Korea, and I had to let them know that South Korea is a completely different government system, economic system, and I had to inform them. But I truly thought that that was an amazing part of the experience, because I was able to open up my community, make them more open-minded, and let them be more knowledgeable of the world around them.
Great. Thank you all so much. We've now reached the hour, and so I think this event it's time to come to an end. First, a huge thank you to our presenters, Katie, Andy, Alicia, and Emma. Thank you so much for the insight you shared, for your presentations, and for all of these questions that you've answered. And thank you to those of you who have joined this event live, either on Zoom or on Facebook. Really appreciate your questions and encourage you prospective students to learn more and apply for NSLI-Y. I chatted the links to the websites I mentioned earlier in the chat box to learn more. And with that, we'll go ahead and end this event. Thank you once again, everyone, and have a great rest of the weekend.